You're lying there still, almost weightless, and the fluorescent lights above you are humming a song you've never heard before, but one that feels strangely familiar. You notice a beep. Then another. The room isn't loud, but it isn't silent either. It's a kind of space where everything feels held in place, like time has hit the brakes but momentum keeps moving. And then the thought arrives. Not like a thunderclap. Not like a whisper. Just a still, terrifying clarity: you're going to die. Maybe it's a nurse's expression, the way the doctor paused a half-second too long before speaking, or how someone you love held your hand too tightly and avoided your eyes. Either way, you know it now. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. You blink. It's weird because the room looks the same. But your perception cracks open like the crust of the earth during an earthquake. The foredrip is still there. The clock still ticks. Your chest still rises and falls. But suddenly, you feel everything. The coldness of the bedsheet. The way your tongue feels in your mouth. The aching regret of unfinished thoughts sitting in the back of your mind like unopened emails. This is it. And you realize something horrifying. You've been alive for decades. And yet, have you ever really lived? Nobody tells you this. Dying doesn't feel like a movie. There's no slow violin score. No montage. Just a flood of awareness that crashes into you all at once, like when you've forgotten a friend's birthday, except this time, the forgotten friend is your entire life. You hear your own breath. It sounds fragile. Like a bird trying to escape a cage made of glass. You try to think of what you'll miss most. And that's when the second horror creeps in: you're not even sure. Was it that beach trip? That third slice of pizza? That time you got promoted and bought noise-canceling headphones like a real adult? There's a joke in your mind, a quiet one. You spent years collecting gadgets and likes and bookmarks for someday, and someday is here. Only now, you don't care about any of them. Funny, right? Your hand twitches slightly, like it wants to reach for something, but what? There's nothing to hold onto. You remember reading somewhere that Thomas Jefferson died whispering, "Is it the 4th?" As if he didn't want to miss Independence Day. Imagine that. A founding father's last thought wasn't about war or peace, but a holiday. It's weird what sticks. And that reminds you what will stick for you. You think about the weirdest things. Like why you never tried that salsa class. Why you stayed quiet at the dinner table that night. Why you never told your friend you forgave them. But those memories don't play like a film. They're jagged. Shuffled. Like opening a drawer that someone shoved everything into before guests came over. You expected your life to flash before your eyes. Instead, it glitches like a bad slideshow, blurry, inconsistent, sometimes missing entire years. Here's the academic argument people still debate: are we more afraid of death, or of never having lived? Aristotle once argued that the unexamined life is not worth living. But in moments like this, it's not about philosophy. It's about the sharp ache of wondering if you waited too long to ask the right questions. You shift slightly, and someone adjusts your pillow. You don't recognize them, but you say thank you anyway. The words sound small. You feel tears prick your eyes, not from sadness, but from realization. You remember something quirky, a fact you once heard: when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it actually turns into liquid first. Total goo. It dissolves itself, completely. You always thought that was dramatic, unnecessary. But now, you understand. Before anything beautiful happens, something has to fall apart. Right now, that's you. And strangely, it's not just frightening. It's peaceful. Because in this exact moment, with the noise fading and the truth rising, you are finally awake. You wish you had more time. But what you really wish is that you'd paid attention to the time you already had. You don't know how long is left. Minutes. Hours. A day. But in this strange, shimmering space between breath and silence, between the beep and the flat line, you finally see your life for what it was. Not a failure. Not a masterpiece. Just something unfinished. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Drop your city and the time you're watching this. I want to know where and when we're sharing this moment together. Now, relax, you can put on some soft music and let's start the journey together right now. Because wait, the best part is at the end. You're not dead. Not yet. But something has died, and that something is the illusion you've been living under all this time. The illusion that tomorrow was a guarantee, that someday was a place on a map, that checking boxes on to-do lists meant you were really here. And so you begin to rewind. Your mind flips backward, not in clean lines but in loops and smudges. Your job. Your commutes. The Monday mornings. The endless emails. The awkward let's circle back meetings. And you can't help but ask yourself, with a strange combination of guilt and clarity, was I even there for any of it? You were so busy being efficient that you forgot how to be alive. You woke up, hit snooze, brushed your teeth while scrolling Instagram. You worked, ate, watched something on Netflix, and repeated. Repeat. 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 You even called it the grind. Like you were proud of it. But what were you grinding for? Retirement? A vacation in Bali you never booked? There's a word for it in German, Torschlusspanik. It means gate closing panic. That moment when you realize the gate of possibility is closing, and suddenly you want to rush through all of them at once. That's you now. Sprinting mentally, trying to fit in a life in the time it takes for a nurse to change your four. And here's the joke. A real one this time. You once spent 2 hours comparing Bluetooth speakers. You read articles, watched videos, made a spreadsheet. But you didn't spend 2 minutes looking into your own joy. Your own dreams. You remember how you'd silence your own instincts like spam calls. You'd think about quitting that job. You'd feel the spark to call someone you hadn't talked to in years. You'd feel that old pull to write, or paint, or sing. But instead, you'd open TikTok and watch a raccoon wash grapes. Again. And that's when the fear creeps in, soft and sneaky like fog under a door. Maybe you never actually chose anything. You just reacted. Replied. Responded. You lived on autopilot. And the destination? Right here. You remember a strange historical fact. During the Black Plague in the 1300s, some people danced in the streets, not because they were celebrating, but because they were terrified. They danced to pretend they weren't dying. Maybe that's all you've been doing too. Dance, scroll, binge, buy. To forget the thing no one teaches you, that a full calendar does not equal a full life. You once read a line from a poet, something like, "We're all just trying to remember how to be human." At the time, you thought it was deep. Now, it feels like a warning you ignored. There was that one Thursday. You remember it now. Nothing special happened. But for once, you didn't look at your phone while walking home. You heard a bird. You saw a woman laughing with her dog. The sky had this color that looked like melted peach. You actually smiled. That was years ago. But now, it glows in your memory like a match in a cave. Why didn't you chase more moments like that? Here's the open-ended academic question for you now. If human consciousness is self-aware, why do we spend so much of our time avoiding it? Is it fear of feeling too much? Or fear of realizing we're not who we wanted to be? The philosopher Heidegger wrote about being toward death. The idea that we should live in awareness of our mortality, not avoid it. But who has time for philosophy when you're stuck in traffic, right? You chuckle at yourself again. Or maybe you just exhale through your nose, which is as close to laughing as you get now. You feel your chest rise and fall again. Still alive. But for the first time, it's not automatic. You're aware of it. You're here, really here. And you start to wonder. If you had a second chance just 24 hours, what would you do? You picture it? No, not skydiving. Not Vegas. You'd sit in the sun. Barefoot. Maybe drink your coffee slowly. You'd hug your mom longer. You'd watch your cat blink and feel like you understood the universe. You wouldn't chase meaning. You'd just notice it. That's the tragedy, isn't it? That you only learn how to live after you stop living on autopilot. That you only wake up once the alarm's been going off for years. You remember another odd fact: scientists have found that octopuses dream. Yes, actual REM cycles. Tiny flashes of color ripple across their skin as they sleep. Even an octopus, a creature with no bones and 9 brains, might live more vividly than some humans. You wonder what your dreams were. The real ones. Not the own a home or get a promotion ones. The ones that burned a little. The ones you buried under realistic goals and debt and obligation. Where did they go? And more importantly, why didn't you follow them? The room is quiet again. You hear footsteps. Someone laughs outside the door. Life, just beyond the wall. It keeps going, with or without you. And that should make you sad. But strangely, it doesn't. Because now, at least, you're present. Not just surviving. Not just floating. Present. You close your eyes not because you're tired, but because you want to feel every second from the inside. The light behind your eyelids glows red-orange. You smell something sterile. You hear a clock tick. You realize, painfully and beautifully, this moment is enough. You used to think life was made up of the big milestones. Graduations. Weddings. Promotions. But now, lying here, skin cold under a thin blanket, heart ticking with a fragility you can feel in your fingertips, you realize it was always the in-between moments. The quiet ones. The ones you didn't notice. You remember sitting in traffic one rainy Tuesday, forehead pressed against the window. You were frustrated because a barista got your coffee order wrong. It ruined your mood for hours. Now, that moment feels absurd. You'd give anything for that wrong coffee now. Anything to stand in line, wet sneakers squeaking on tile. To smell the burnt espresso, hear the awkward small talk. This is the plot twist, isn't it? You spent your whole life chasing comfort. Avoiding discomfort. But now that comfort has become a prison. And discomfort, the fear, the grief, the regret, feels more honest than anything else. It's as if you've only just begun to taste what it means to be real. To be messy. To feel deeply. You think of a strange historical moment. In 1970, during the Apollo 13 mission, an oxygen tank exploded in space. The astronauts were stranded, freezing, low on power and air. But when they returned to Earth, they said the view of the planet from the void was the most beautiful thing they had ever seen. Almost dying made them see clearly. Why does it take proximity to death to ignite the poetry of life? Here's another quirky fact. Bananas are technically berries. But strawberries are not. Isn't that just how life works too? Things aren't what they seem. You thought you were living. But you were surviving with fancy filters and noise-canceling headphones. You close your eyes and listen to your breath again. It sounds like ocean waves now. In and out. There's something sacred in its rhythm. You begin to remember people not as roles or titles, but as feelings. Your grandfather's calloused hands, heavy on your shoulder. The smell of your best friend's hoodie after a summer night. The way your dog looked at you, as if you were made of bacon and moonlight. And you remember that one person. The one who made your stomach feel like a trampoline. You had a chance once. You were both in that tiny bookstore, fingers brushing over the same copy of Siddhartha. You joked. They smiled. And instead of saying what you wanted, want to grab coffee, you said, "You can have it," and walked away. That memory stings now. It stings not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. You start to count all the things you didn't do. Not out of sadness, but curiosity. How many people didn't you meet? How many meals didn't you savor? How many sunsets did you ignore, because you were too busy refreshing your inbox? It's a heavy list. But also, strangely beautiful. Like standing in the middle of a burned forest and realizing life will still find a way to bloom again. Here's a question your heart is finally brave enough to ask. What would life look like if you weren't afraid? Not just of failure, but of success. Of connection. Of actually being seen. The philosopher Camus once said, "In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer." You used to think that meant strength. Now you realize it means softness. That somewhere, beneath your layers of busyness and sarcasm and passwords, you were warm. Alive. You remember the night you cried in the shower. Not from pain, but from exhaustion. Nobody knew. You walked out, dried off, and said, "I'm fine." Because that's what you do, right? You perform. You curate your sadness into palatable portions. You call it just tired or just stressed. But you weren't tired. You were starving. Starving for real moments. For someone to see you. For a day where you didn't have to explain yourself in emojis or apology. And now that it might be too late, you realize you were already enough. You always were. You don't need a blue check mark or six-figure income or a skincare routine designed by Scandinavian monks. You need presence. The kind that feels like standing barefoot in the grass while a storm rolls in. Messy. True. Yours. Outside the window, a bird lands on the ledge. You watch its tiny head twitch, its feathers puffed. You swear it looks at you. Just for a second. And you feel seen. There's this funny thing that happens in hospitals. Time doesn't exist the way it does outside. It stretches, compresses. 5 minutes can feel like a century. And sometimes, a lifetime can slip by in a single heartbeat. And that's when it hits you. The climax. The twist. You're not dying. You're waking up. For the first time in years, maybe in your whole life, you're actually here. Alive. Not because your heart's beating. But because your eyes are open. Because you're feeling everything: the grief, the longing, the rage, the awe. And feeling, my friend, is the first step back to life. You laugh. Not the nose exhale this time. A real one. Because you remember something ridiculous. You used to get angry when YouTube ads interrupted your videos. Now you miss the annoyance. You miss caring about little things. It meant you were engaged. Connected. Plugged into the fabric of being. And isn't that what life is? A series of interruptions. Moments that pull you off course, only to show you what matters. You look down at your hands. Same fingers that scrolled. Same fingers that hugged. Same ones that held too tightly, or not tightly enough. They've done so much. And suddenly, you whisper, not to anyone in the room, but to yourself. I forgive you. You don't need more time. You need more truth in the time you already have. You don't need to be better. You need to be honest. You are not your past. You are not your regrets. You are not your follower count or your inbox zero. You are a breathing miracle. With a cracked open heart. And it's not too late. Not yet. You wake up again not from sleep, but from forgetting. For a few seconds, you don't remember where you are. And that, strangely, feels beautiful. Because in that foggy space between confusion and clarity, there's possibility. And this time, you don't reach for your phone. There is no phone. Instead, you listen. To the faint beep of the monitor. To the shuffling of someone's footsteps down the hallway. To the quiet hum of the fluorescent light above. And something about it feels holy. Like a song you've heard before but never really listened to. This morning, if we can call it that, you don't feel afraid. You feel empty. But not in a tragic way. More like a freshly cleaned plate. Ready. Do you know about the Japanese concept of ma? It's the space between things. The pause in a conversation. The silence between musical notes. That's where you are now. In the ma of your life. And maybe, just maybe, that's where you should have been looking all along. You remember a quote by Virginia Woolf. A woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. You always thought it was about feminism or freedom. But now you realize it's about space. About giving yourself permission to exist without apology. To have a room, metaphorically or literally, where you get to say, this is mine. And what did you do instead? You filled your time with noise. Podcasts at 2x speed. Multitasking like it was an Olympic event. You wore busy like a badge. But now, your badge has rusted. And you're left with what's underneath. Your pulse. Your breath. Your name, still echoing in someone's memory. There's a peculiar fact that pops into your mind, randomly. Sharks are older than trees. Let that sink in. These ocean predators have existed for over 400 million years. And yet, you stressed about turning 30. You smile. Because sharks don't care about deadlines. They don't compare themselves to other sharks. They just swim. You wonder what your life might have been if you had just swum. The nurse checks in. She doesn't say much, but her touch is gentle. You try to meet her eyes. You want to say thank you, but your mouth is dry. So you blink slowly. She nods. She gets it? And here's the academic question you suddenly feel equipped to answer. Is it possible to live a meaningful life without understanding death? You think, probably not. Because this place, this moment, this limbo. is where meaning crystallizes. Not when you're winning. Not when you're liked. But when you're stripped bare, staring at the end, and you ask, did any of it matter? The memory that arrives next feels random at first. A childhood game. Hide and seek in your cousin's backyard. You hid behind the shed and no one found you. At first, it felt like victory. But after a while, it just felt lonely. You came out on your own. And when they asked, where were you? You shrugged. Because it was too hard to explain. Maybe that's what adulthood became for you. A long game of hiding. You disappeared into expectations, algorithms, performance reviews, and polite laughter. And now, you're ready to come out. It's not too late. You're still here. Do you know that during the Blitz in London, children would draw pictures in bomb shelters? Smiling suns, flowers, houses. Even as the ground shook above them, they clung to beauty. That's what the human spirit does. It paints joy onto concrete walls. It whispers lullabies through explosions. And you still have your voice. You still have a story. Even if no one hears it but the ceiling tiles. You want to write it down. To say, I was here. I mattered. I felt things. I made mistakes. I loved poorly and honestly. You want someone to read it years from now and whisper, me too. Because that's all we really want, isn't it? To not be alone. To be understood. You look at your hands again. The 4 is taped to your skin. But your fingers move freely. You wiggle them like piano keys. There's music in them still. Another wave of memory crashes in. The time you were lost in a new city and asked a stranger for help. He didn't just point, he walked you to the place. You never forgot his kindness. You never saw him again. Kindness. That's the real currency, isn't it? Not the kind you flaunt on social media. But the quiet kind. The I'll sit with you in the dark kind. You think of all the people you ghosted. All the friends you meant to text back. All the birthdays you forgot. And you whisper, I'm sorry. Not for guilt. But because they deserved more. Then, with a full breath, you whisper again. Thank you. Because they gave you something, even if you didn't know it at the time. There's a strange peace that settles over you. Not joy. Not relief. Just peace. Like when the plane finally lands. Or the lights dim before a movie. Or when someone says, you don't have to explain. You're not chasing answers anymore. You're not waiting for closure. You're simply being. And maybe that's the point. The world keeps spinning. Somewhere, a child is being born. Somewhere else, someone is laughing so hard they can't breathe. And you are still here. And that matters. So you close your eyes. Not in surrender. But in arrival. And just before everything fades, you think. I could have done more. But I felt it all. And that might be enough. Your eyes open again. You don't know how long it's been. Hours. A day. But time isn't linear anymore. It drips and folds like honey in warm tea, slow, sweet, and unpredictable. You're still in the hospital. Still tethered to tubes and machines. Still breathing. And somehow, that's surprising. You turn your head slightly. Light filters through the blinds like a broken pattern, lines of gold across dull white walls. There's something about this light that makes the room feel less like a room. and more like a memory. You remember one day in high school. You skipped class to watch the sunrise alone from the bleachers. No one noticed. But the sky turned cotton candy pink, and in that moment, you swore you understood everything. And then you forgot. For years. You forget a lot of things. Not just birthdays or groceries. But the softness of rain on your skin. The feeling of lying in grass and not worrying about ants. The taste of water when you're truly thirsty. You reach for those memories now. Not out of nostalgia. But because they feel like proof. Proof that you were once fully alive. There's an odd little historical story you recall. When President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in 1865. His pockets contained a Confederate $5 bill, a pair of eyeglasses, a handkerchief, and a newspaper clipping praising him. Isn't that something? Even the great emancipator needed reassurance. He kept proof that he mattered. Just like you. You chuckle softly, well, as much as your dry throat allows. Because maybe we all carry scraps of meaning in our pockets. Hoping someone finds them and says, "Look, this person lived. This person tried." You think about your browser history. The late night searches. Am I depressed? How to be happy again. Ways to stop wasting life. And the endless scroll. So many tabs open. So many unopened parts of yourself. You never finished that book you started writing. Never learned to cook without burning rice. You still owe your mom a proper thank you. And you never told your high school art teacher how much her words meant. But maybe that's okay. Because life isn't a checklist. It's not a spreadsheet or a perfectly filtered grid. It's more like jazz. Improvised. Messy. Offbeat. And when it works, it moves your soul. Here's a funny thing about you. You've always hated funerals, but loved cemeteries. The quiet. The carved names. The little flowers left behind. It never felt morbid. It felt like peace. Like everyone was telling a story without using words. And that's what you want now. Not to be remembered for your job title or Instagram bio. But for 1,000 tiny kindnesses that no one noticed at the time. You want someone to say, "They were gentle when the world wasn't." Your thoughts slow down. You're not chasing wisdom anymore. You're welcoming it. You start to see life not as something you lived, but something you were a guest inside of. A beautiful, chaotic Airbnb of existence. And now it's time to leave a review. You give it 4 stars. You deduct 1 because of the anxiety. There's an open-ended question that swirls in your brain. Rising like steam. If you could go back, not to do more, but to feel more, would you? You sit with it. And eventually, your heart whispers, yes. But here's the twist. Maybe you can. Not in the rewind your life sense. But right now. Right here. You shift your eyes toward the window. There's a small bird outside. It hops along the sill. Tilts its head. Pecks the glass once. And then flies away. It doesn't look back. And that's the lesson, isn't it? Stop looking back. The past isn't a place you live. It's a museum. You visit. You learn. You leave. You've learned. You're leaving. But not in fear now. In fullness. There's still a breath left in you. And that means something. Because if you're breathing, you're feeling. And if you're feeling, you're alive. No more autopilot. No more noise for the sake of silence. No more running from the mirror. This is your face. This is your moment. This is your life. Stripped of filters. Unboxed from expectations. And it is enough. You think of something Mr. Rogers once said. I like you just the way you are. Simple. But radical. Because the world keeps shouting, change. Improve. Upgrade. And all you wanted was to be told you're okay. Well. You are. Right here. Right now. Even in this hospital bed. Even with regrets. Even with unfinished dreams. You close your eyes again. Not from exhaustion. But from choice. This time, there's no fear. No list of things you should have done. Just one thought that floats softly across your mind like dandelion seeds. I was here. I mattered. I finally lived. And then. Silence. Soft. Welcoming. Whole. And now, here we are at the edge of everything and nothing. The room grows quiet, not because the world has stopped, but because you have. You've slowed down long enough to listen. To feel. To remember. And in that stillness, you found something no achievement could give you. Presence. You see, the point was never to race through life collecting checkmarks like souvenirs. It was to wake up. To taste each moment. To let tears fall without shame. To laugh so hard your stomach hurt. To sit in silence with someone you love, and say nothing, because nothing needed saying. You were never supposed to be perfect. You were just supposed to be real. And now you know that. So if you're still here, still breathing, you have time. Maybe not forever. But enough. Enough to say I love you. Enough to stand outside and feel the sun. Enough to put your hand on your chest and whisper, I am alive. And I will not waste it. That's your gift. Not tomorrow. Not someday. But now. Because now, you finally understand. To truly live is to feel. Deeply, fully, messily. So live. While you can. And make it count. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Have a great day.